Hi guys, Beyond Reason, David Stone. I'm out in the park in Dartford. I'm with Jan, my partner. I'm going to talk today about theology or religion. I'm not a believer. I'm an atheist. I don't think there's sufficient evidence, though agnostic, it's okay if you want to say that you can't prove there isn't a God. I'd go along with that, but I don't personally feel that there's enough evidence for anything supernatural. And we don't need it to account for most of the things that we're confronted with. And where it does apply in the metaphysical arena, it's of no consequence to me. But out of the 8 billion souls or so on the planet, something like 6.5 billion do believe in a God or spirit or supernatural being of some sort, and I am not going to be arrogant and full of hubris about my take on the world is superior or more intellectually honest, and that everybody else is bonkers. I'm not going to go down that road. I think there is a huge amount of positive stuff that comes out of certain branches of religion, especially libertarian theology, which looks at religion in terms of eudaimonia or human flourishing, which I'll go along with. But anyway, that's a slight distraction. As far as I can tell, there's two kinds of approaches to religion that inform theology. One is the one that tries to develop an argument, a kind of either logically consistent or evidential based argument as proof of the existence of God. And the other one is faith, which doesn't require evidence or proof. So breaking those two down, the first one, looking at an evidential basis, there's two sides to that too. One is the 5 kind of like major strands of theology, which looks at the cosmological argument, the argument on causation, the argument of movement, the argument of design, and the argument of perfectibility and teleology. And then there's the one that looks at archaeology and history and tries to look at testimony and accounts of the Bible and the literal interpretation of certain strands of the Bible, certain Gospels, as providing a narrative account of the existence of Jesus and Jesus' miracles, and therefore by inference God. On the 5 main arguments, all of them follow a similar kind of approach, which is that our understanding of evidence through the scientific method is deductive and is not fully explanatory. So when we look at something like cosmology, if there was a Big Bang, which we don't know for certain, if there was a Big Bang, what was there before and what caused it? Into that conceptual gap jumps theology with God caused it. And same for evolution. We might accept evolution as a scientific fact, but all the gaps in the evolutionary story are filled by the supernatural God. But so the cosmological argument is that there has to, and this is linked to the argument for movement and causation, is that there had to be a prime mover or prime cause. They're the same kind of thing, really. And this is distinct from the arguments around perfectibility and design, but all related in the sense that you follow back perfectibility and design. There has to be a first designer. This Paley's watch, you find the watch on the ground, someone must have made it. You look at the world around you, it is extraordinary. Forget about disease and disaster and death and tsunamis and earthquakes and all of that for the time being. But its extraordinariness has to be explained somehow. let's just focus on one. First cause, primary cause. Simple argument, cause and effect. Every effect has to have a cause. But you can't entertain logically reductionism in which you just keep going backwards in terms of every explanation for the cause requires yet another explanation of that cause. There has to be a correct first cause. This is where God comes in. There must have been someone who lit the fuse or kick-started the process to get it all going. So you have that, the cosmological argument, the argument for movement and causation is very much the same, the argument from perfectibility or design, and then the argument from purpose. Without God there's no purpose, without purpose there's no morality, and without morality there's just anarchy, selfishness and chaos. Now, none of those I think is supportable either in terms of their logical consistency or their necessary inference. So even if you were to say, go along with the argument that every effect has a cause and there has to be a primary cause somewhere, it doesn't mean it has to be God. It could have been an accident, it could have been a genetic fluke, it could have just been a quantum fluctuation in something or other. There's no necessary reason why it has to be a supernatural explanation. As for purpose, there's no reason I can see why purpose can't be something we invent for ourselves. It's a kind of existential argument, I grant you, but if you look at all the different cultures and the empires and the evolution of societies over countless thousands of years, you can't see a singular design around any of them. Some of them have been autocratic, some of them have been monarchies, some have been democratic, some have been hugely tribal, with tribal chiefs in them, some have been more egalitarian than others, some have been quasi-democratic with some sense of like collective undertaking responsibility. You can't discern any divinity behind any of that sort of stuff, and it's constantly evolving. What you can discern is an idea of human design and human design purpose. So what then of the value of it all? Religion has a value, as I said, in terms of like libertarian theology, where faith comes into an account of how people can put others before themselves, love thy neighbour as themselves, moral injunctions against murder, against crime, against brutality, against child abuse. In some expositions of it, in terms of anti-slavery, all of that kind of Wilberforce stuff, it has qualities that I can see as being useful, beneficial and enlightened, but they seem to arise not because they're religious, but despite their being religious. They seem to come out of a commitment to a humanist belief system, not a religious one, and the religion comes afterwards, or it comes alongside as being part of your cultural baggage, as it were. Anyway, I'm not a believer, but I will be talking to a lot of believers from various different belief systems, and I'm going to really work hard and not trying to prejudge the outcome of that. But I'm just letting you know that I'm starting from a fairly cynical perspective, but one that also recognises that it's not all simply black and white. As usual with these things, it's very nuanced and layered, and we need to get into some of that nuanced account too.